When you buy a residential property, single family house, the appraiser sees the contract because they asked for it. Should be subjective, but whatever. 9 out of 10 times, it always comes in at contract price. Why is that?
You always want to be honest. Like, I'll give that disclaimer. You always want to be honest, but like, is an appraiser, generally speaking, going to be like, okay, you did windows, like, let's see your bank statement. How far do they go?
That's why an appraisal is like a series of checks and balances, especially commercial appraisal that has cost approach, sales approach, income approach. Like, they really all need to jive. And if they all do at the end of the day, you probably did your work correctly.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sky's the Limit podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Ryan. Today, we have a great episode, great guest. We have our first appraiser, Mike Baldwin. He's really going to unlock the keys to the kingdom for all investors. Appraisers are probably one of the most maybe hated people in all real estate investing. It's very subjective, but he's really going to go through what can increase the value of your property, whether you're flipping or you're doing a refinance, how to dispute an appraisal. So we're going to go through it all. Really great episode.
You know, what's really important to note when we're talking about a lot of different things, like the BRRRR strategy, like some of our stories, and especially with the BRRRR strategy, there tends to be like a lot of numbers. If you listen to us on YouTube and watch us on YouTube, we'll have graphics there that will spell out the numbers, give really cool pictures about some of the stories we talk about. It's something to definitely tune into.
You want to bring Mike on?
So
we got Mike Baldwin today. He's a licensed real estate broker. He's been investing in real estate for the last 10 years. He invests
in Waterbury.
Invests in primary in Waterbury, Connecticut. Has 30 units. He's a buy and hold investor, and he is a certified general appraiser, which is he's been doing commercial appraisals.
And they hold the keys to the kingdom.
So without further ado, let's bring Mike on. Mike, welcome. Thank you for coming. It's an honor to have you here, our first appraiser. This is gonna be a great episode. I have 1,000 questions for you. My opinions aside about appraisers, no offense.
No problem.
We could write a book on appraisals and the good, the bad, the ugly. It's just but I wanna give you the airtime. I want to hear why you got into appraisals. You're a full-time investor. You're a licensed real estate broker. You got a lot going on. You have 30 units. You invest primarily in Waterbury, Connecticut, right?
Yes, sir.
Dirty water. That's what they call it, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of names. That one's like one of the more common ones, I guess.
Yeah. The thing I want to unpack the most is, as for our listeners, most of them are investors or want to be investors, what are the things that they can do to drive the value of their property, whether that's commercial or it's residential? So this will apply to flippers, anyone doing refinances, mainly cash out refinances. What can I do to my property from an appraiser's perspective to drive the value of that building? So that honestly, that's like that's my first question.
All right, first question. So I'm going to dive into a lot of things just to get some of the basics out in the open. And first of all, I've seen both sides of the coin. So the investor, the appraiser, we both have different wants and needs, but both sides have some sort of motivation that they're working for. And I'm both, so I can tell you both ways. You know, as an investor, obviously I always want the highest value or sometimes the lowest value in certain cases, estates, taxes, divorce, etc. But I mean, as the investor, I'm very motivated to have the appraisal just work in my favor. And I, as the investor, am incredibly biased. The appraiser, on the other hand, their job is to try to at least provide the most objective appraisal possible. That means only relying on factual data, just basically using the data to tell the story. So there's a problem. Two people who want completely different things. And you want to know, how do we make this situation work to the appraiser side? So this is what I'll say. Appraisals in general are not objective. They are subjective, and that's because everything in this world is influenced by external forces, right? So let's just go from the residential side first because that's easy. If I'm an appraiser and I go to a neighborhood that I personally love, like maybe where I take the kids to get ice cream, and I see a very beautiful house. I mean, obviously, I have these preconceived notions in my head that this house it's beautiful, it's great, it has like a family memory attached to. These are some of the external factors that can influence an appraisal. And this is just natural. Like, we talked about Waterbury before. Is Waterbury good or bad? It's neither, really. There are facts about Waterbury, and then there's feelings. So as an appraiser, you try to separate yourself from that, but sometimes you can't. Mm-hmm. So to get, diving into your question, your job is, as the investor, is to sell to the appraiser. You need to sell whatever you're trying to do. Okay, in the situation where, a lot of people are facing in Connecticut right now, their taxes went way up. Well, maybe I'm going to tell the appraiser, this building is terrible. No one ever pays me rent. Look, it's dirty. It's gross. Take the picture of this bad thing. Take a picture of this bad thing. Blah, 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 blah. Because my goal is to say, okay, the building has a low value. I'm going to submit this to try and lower my taxes with the municipality. And I need to sell to the appraiser, or my real estate agent needs to sell to the appraiser whatever it's going on. The reverse of that is simple as well. In a residential transaction or a commercial transaction where you're trying to get the highest value possible, I need to tell the appraiser, look at all these beautiful windows I put into the building. Try to explain it. Use the data, create a story that's verifiable, that's going to show that you really created this value.
Yeah, interesting.
So is it okay to, let's just say the appraiser is going to meet you at 10 o'clock in Waterbury. They're going to take a look at your place. Is it okay to come with a stack of documents? This is a receipt for what I did for the windows. This is this, and this is that. Here are my comps. Here's everything you need to give me the value that I need.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more verifiable documentation you can provide, the better. And again, I'm speaking from the investor side now. Sometimes I don't actually want to verify. Sometimes I want to leave things out in the open. But at least we know, when it's verifiable, if it needs to be included in the report, it must be included in the report because it's verifiable. So I'll give you a tangible example of this. We're doing, or I was doing an appraisal in the Bronx where we needed to show the lowest value possible. And we were using, good water expense comps. And, we came up with a value that was unsuitable for the client, who was the owner of the building. And then he came and he gave us the actual water bills, which were higher than what we were using. And we changed it because that's the truth. So if you have verifiable data, which can be presented in the form of documents at the time of the appraisal, then yes, absolutely. And it just goes for both things. I'll give you another example on the good side. When I'm doing a refinance myself and, I want to show how good the building is, I'm going to provide a construction budget. And again, that's hard to verify, but usually, some guys are going to ask to see an invoice. Some guys are going to see something signed by a contractor. But, a lot of times it's pretty casual and they just want to see your construction budget. So I provide my personal construction budget, and that's it.
What are some specific things, either home flippers or someone that's buying a distressed property and they're going to add value through construction, and then they're going to go do a cash out refinance and try to pull out as much of their own capital as possible, so they want that highest appraisal, so that then the bank will give them a loan to value, 75% loan to value on that appraised value. So the higher the appraised value, the more cash out they can have. If that's their goal, so flippers or people doing refinances, going into buying the property, what are some specific things that they can look for, that they can do to add value? What's going to drive the highest value? Is it adding an extra bedroom? Is it building a garage? Is it replacing the roof? How much weight do appraisers, from your perspective, give on finishing touches? Is it going to make a difference if I do laminate versus granite or quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, hardwood floors versus carpet? Is there anything specific when doing the renovations? Let's just keep it in residential, so 1 to 4 units.
Sure.
Is there anything specific, we and our listeners should know when we're going through the construction before we actually start? What's gonna make the property worth the most, in your opinion?
It's really hard to say, but I can give you more philosophical words on that. But I think it's worth it, really. So there's no one single repair that's like, okay, this is the holy grail of things that's like gonna really convince an appraiser that my property has a lot of value. But I guess that for us as investors, I can say that when an appraiser goes and looks at a building, usually appraisers aren't general contractors. Usually they don't know very much about construction budgets. Usually they're going and they're looking with their eyes. So you have to, again, sell. I mean, what would be the most appealing to your market, to the particular appraiser that's coming to view the building? So, I mean, yeah, most people like to see granite. Most people like to see stainless steel. Is an appraiser who's never worked a day in construction in their life, who's never swung a hammer or even tried to do remodeling in their own property, are they going to be able to say if the roof has been done or not? I mean, sometimes it's very obvious and sometimes it's not. So it's really up to you to decide how you sell your property. If you put in Anderson windows and you spent all that money to do so, you use the brand name and you're like, I did this. But if you didn't do that and you just put in windows, sell the best way that you sell. But if you want to talk from a psychological factor, the eye appeal, the curb appeal, all that stuff, that definitely all matters psychologically. So that's my long roundabout answer.
And with residential, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're giving more weight to the sales comparison approach versus the income approach, which you would maybe weigh more heavily on in commercial real estate for appraisals, right?
Well, yeah, there's many different forms of appraisals. So in residential specifically, if we're talking about the sale of 1 to 4 units and it's just on a form appraisal document, like a Fannie Mae type appraisal, which I don't do, by the way, but I can speak on it because took some classes, just not as an expert. There is no income approach. I mean, some of these appraisals have little extensions on them, like when you're doing a multifamily home to look at the rent and stuff like that, and that's considered, but not nearly as much as the actual sales comparison approach. So you're exactly correct. So unless you're actually getting a narrative commercial appraisal, it's all based on the sales comparison approach, which is another good point that I'd like to bring up really quick. One thing that we have to keep in mind is that usually, in any residential property, the best comp, the highest sale within your target area, so the AMC is going to decide that, whether it be a 1 mile radius or the municipality or whatever. So they're going to decide which, radius to use, and then the best comp in that area. That's pretty much your limit. So you can't let's say working on a regular single family house in Farmington and think that you're going to be better than all of the comps in the area just because you put in a bunch of improvements. I mean, the appraiser could go and say that, this is extraordinary. We need to take different measures to look at this house differently, but chances are not. So you always have to have that in mind too. What's the best comp in the area that, I can try to at least match, but probably not exceed.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of hard money loans for people. And the biggest, most important thing I tell everybody, I know I've told you this a couple of times, is we have to nail down that budget because the budget paints a picture for the appraiser.
Yes.
And that's how the appraiser goes from as-is value of 100,000 to ARV of 300. We need to paint that picture.
Yes.
So a lot of times people will fill out the rehab budget and it looks okay, but it's heavily skewed to items like rewiring of electrical, plumbing. It's a lot of stuff that the appraiser cannot see. So I guess my question is I'm glad you said what you said. We need to focus on things that they can actually see and put value on, because they can't see the wiring. They can't really see the plumbing.
Yeah.
But if you've got a line item in there that's $20,000 for plumbing, $20,000 for electrical, is there any weight given to that?
Yeah, appraisers want to see numbers. And again, there's a long answer to this too, but I'll try to keep it more succinct. Basically, there's two scenarios. Okay, residential, they want to see numbers because they're like, whoa, you spent $200,000? It must be like worth this much, It creates a psychological effect. You put the $200,000 on paper, they read it. If they believe it, that's created this value in their head that they're going to try to justify through data. And the commercial side of things, it's basically the same. But in commercial, we look more like, if the previous sale was recent and then you did improvements, we're going to think that the new value is the previous sale plus the improvements plus entrepreneurial incentive. And that's if it just happened in like the last year or so. So it's really important then. I mean, if a bunch of years have passed, not so important. But I mean, to your point, like, does all these repairs and costs that I've done, does it get factored in? I mean, absolutely, if you see it or if you can't. But before, I was just speaking in the way of sales.
Yeah.
What do they see? How can I influence, to give a better value?
Right. What is entrepreneurial incentive?
It's just basically a word that we use. Like, I'm not going to buy a building for $500,000 and fix it for $300 if I can only sell it for $800. I mean, because that would just be silly. I did all the work and I made no money. So in every single deal, there's a factor of what the developer would need to make that creates the actual value. So if I'm going to buy something for $500, fix it for $300, what do I need to make as a developer in order for me to be incentivized to purchase the property? And, sometimes we say 15, 20, 25, depending on the amount of risk. But, 15 is a good number that I used to use in the past, in my experience.
Really interesting. I didn't know that.
Do you think, so we're going through this right now, and I'm going to be a little selfish and bring up our Middletown building. Two questions here, going back to the entrepreneurial incentive.
Yes.
If I'm buying a property for, let's say, $2 million, and I put in $500,000, I think it's going to be worth $3 million when I'm all said and done. I'm into it for $2.5 million. I think it's going to be worth $3 million. The income approach and the sales comps are all justifying that $3 million value, but I had my shit together. I got it done in 6 months. I haven't seasoned the property for a year. Will you still give me that value, or will the bank? Do you think the bank will give you a hard time and not? It's only been 6 months. Like, there's no way you created $500,000 of extra value, even if you did spend $500,000 in rehab. Right. Do you think? How does the appraisals and banks see that? Are they going to give you that value?
So you're saying that you've completed
I've completed it in 6 months. I haven't seasoned the building for a year yet, which most banks like to see.
Right.
Are you going to give us pushback on that?
So as an appraiser, no. We're going to look at market conditions, and we're going to actually study to see if you've created that value. But if you're, solely speaking from, cost approach type of answer, no. Like, you did the repairs, you expected a certain amount of entrepreneurial incentive. That's the cost approach. Now, does the income and sales approach actually justify the work you did? So, in a commercial appraisal, there can be like many different types of values, but usually, it's those three, like income, sales, cost, and they all have to jive. But basically, to your point, if you make the repairs, you did it. That's real. That goes into the cost approach. Then we go to verify. Okay, did the repairs increase the sales approach value, and then did the repairs increase the income approach value? If all three jive, or if it's leaning in one direction, that's the way that we go. Gotcha. But then, your lender will probably come back and say, "Hey, this hasn't been seasoned, so go somewhere else."
It's crazy. They have ultimate decision at the end of the day whether they want to. They'll look at your report and they're like, "Yeah, okay, well, we're not gonna value that."
From a lender's perspective, though, if you have I usually do non-conventional loans, so normally when this comes up and they haven't reached that seasoning period, which for us, if you bought it via loan, we can do a cash out refi after 3 months. If you've purchased via cash, it's after 6 months. But if you haven't reached those milestones, we will only give you credit for purchase price plus verifiable rehab. So like in your example,
regardless of the appraisal.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So like in your example, like 2 million purchase plus 500 in verifiable rehab, we would give you like 2.5.
That's it. Even if it was worth 3 based on income or
but
sales.
So in your example, like as soon as you reach that 365th day, it's like, oh, sure, we can use the appraisal.
$500,000.
Yeah, we can do it now.
So
crazy.
Going back to our Middletown building, we have a hard money loan on it, and we're paying out the ass in interest, 12% interest. So it's basically holding costs are around $20,000 a month. Like it's expensive.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. So we're under the gun. Like we have an LOI on a prospective tenant's coming in. I've agreed to do $110,000 in TI, tenant improvements, right? But we're under the gun with this high interest loan. We want to quickly refinance. So my question is, from an appraisal perspective, will appraisers generally give me the same value if I have a fully executed lease, but the construction is not done yet? Will you still give me value on that lease, even if the work isn't done? Because we want to refinance, get out of that high interest loan, but the work's not going to be completed in time. I'll have a fully signed lease and work will be underway, but it's not going to be done. So how do you view that?
Well, okay, so the principle or the most important thing in this really is the cash flows. So you have the fully executed lease, which has a personal guarantee, and makes them financially obligated to pay you a certain amount of money so long as everyone performs for a certain amount of time. So as an appraiser, that's the most important thing, the cash flows from that. And after that, it starts to get a little bit dicey because, commercial appraisals are narrative. So they can go many different ways. But I will say that, it could be treated in a number of different ways. First of all, retail space normally is presented, especially in high-performing markets or healthy markets, like Middletown is sort of like a white box. So I have a building, I have a retail space. The prospective value of the space is based on the space completely vacant with nothing in it. So you're already valuing it that way. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter. Some people are going to request your lease. They're going to study your lease. They're going to see that you're giving, $100,000 in TI. It's not built out yet or whatever, and they're going to make an adjustment for that, or they're going to implement a cost to cure, saying that, okay, you could get this specific value, if you do these specific repairs. So we're going to subtract the cost of repairs times entrepreneurial incentive from the appraisal. That's a cost to cure. But in essence, the most important thing is really the cash flow. So they're going to give you full credit for the cash flows minus a little bit of risk, and then everything else is based on the appraiser's judgment.
Yeah, but so if we have actually real life, we have a 5-year lease.
Yeah.
LOI is for a 5-year lease, and we're gonna sign it. We're gonna create the lease, and it starts off at $9 a square foot, and it goes up $10, $11, $12, $13, $14 is where it's gonna end. So we haven't realized $14 a square foot yet. Year one's $9 a square foot. So from an appraiser's perspective, where are you giving me value? Are you taking the average between 9 and 14, or are you giving me because that's a big difference. We're talking $40,000.
I'm nervous.
No,
I don't want the answer.
Don't be nervous. It's really
but
easy.
It's a big difference. It's either at $9 a square foot, we have 4,700 square feet. It's about $40,000 and change, or like $42,000 in annual income. But at $14 a square foot,
big number.
That's $60,000 ish.
So you're gonna.
So what are you gonna give me?
You're gonna pull out the good old financial calculator, and you're gonna find the net present value of the cash flows of those 5 years.
Dude, that just went right over my head. I'm not gonna lie.
Discounted.
Did we both go to finance school?
I had my college roommate help me with it.
All right, fair.
Discounted at the appropriate rate. But basically each year is given their own value based on a discount, and it gets less and less as time goes on because there's more risk. That's how the discount works. That's how the net present value of the cash flow works. So basically, it's like we're giving you full credit for the first year at a certain price. Then the second year, there's a little bit more risk, but we're basically giving you full credit for that price as
You're
well.
saying it's
and so
more
on
risk
and so on.
because it's closer to the lease at the end term.
Just
of
like
the
anything
lease.
can happen in the
Yeah,
future,
default
basically.
risk. Also, the time value of money goes down. Blah blah blah. A bunch of financial
But the space
stuff.
is quote unquote worth more the more years
Yeah.
you get into it.
Yeah, but the risk goes up because, again, I mean, this is the way the bank and financial world sees it. I mean, basically, there's more risk for default as time goes on, and also the time value of money goes down as
Interesting.
well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is really interesting.
Never knew
okay.
that.
But
Hopefully, I'm saying that right too. But that's basically how I understand it.
Okay. Wow. All right. So the space does not have to be completed, though. I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. It's
No.
just it's the lease sign.
Right. It's the lease signed, and again, I think this would work for most lenders too. But again, we're talking about this dance that we do between lenders and appraisers. Usually, the executed lease is all you need. I mean, for me as an appraiser, it's all I need. Who knows what the lender says, but that's my point of view.
Let's go back to, let's say, a 3-unit building, residential.
Yep.
I fully rehabbed it and I want to do a cash out refinance. Is it important for me to get it fully rented out to get the highest value? Do you, from an appraiser's standpoint, do you want to see 3 fully executed leases at the top dollar rent, or are you going to use rental market rents for that value, even if it's not leased out?
So again, I mean, it goes kind of back to the lender here. I mean, as an appraiser, I don't mind. I mean, market rent is market rent. Commercial, unlike residential, it's not very hard to find a tenant. I mean, we might do a little bit of rent loss due to lease up is a factor that adds in when there's vacancy, but usually it's not necessary in a healthy market. So the short answer is no, it doesn't matter to me whether it's vacant or leased. Sometimes if you have above market rents, it's a lot more preferable to have the leases signed so you can prove that you have above market rents. But if you're truly looking to find market rent, then no, it doesn't matter. But I do know that in a lot of DSCR loan situations, they require signed leases. So
That's right. So on a refi, we view it as like, okay, you've owned this property and now you want to refinance with us, and like you don't even have this place rented. Like we're not doing that. So like we need those leases in place on a refi. On a purchase, you can buy it with not everything rented, and we can use those market rents.
Yeah.
But on a refi, we figure like, okay, you've owned it. Like, what do you like? You haven't gotten it rented. Like, what are you doing?
So you're not going to give us much value to it.
We're not going to be able to use market rents. Like you have to have it rented, or we can't do it at all.
Interesting. And then the age-old question.
I know what you're going to ask.
I know. I have to ask it for all the other real estate agents out there. I have to
can't wait
ask
for
it.
this. Oh, gosh.
9 out of freaking 10 times when you buy a residential property, single-family house, the appraiser sees the contract because they asked for it. Should be subjective, but whatever. 9 out of 10 times, it always comes in at contract price. Why is that?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know why they use exactly contract price because I'm not a residential appraiser, but I do know that, it's the whole psychological deal. I mean, I think that all parties, like the bank, the buyer, the seller, they're all thinking about that price. And moreover, like everyone's happier when they just see that price. Think about,
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm an appraiser. I come in, I'm like, okay, this is worth $400,000, but contract price is $375,000. I hand that in. Okay, next thing you know, seller's like, what? $400,000? Blah, 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 blah. I mean, if I had to guess, I would say that these dudes are just making their life easier. Okay, obviously there's a psychological factor involved. They saw the contract. They go back to the market. They go and try to prove it. If there's verifiable data, like, why not? But like to really answer your question like head on, I don't know. I wish I could tell you like, oh, like the bank wants it this way or this and that, but I have no idea because I've done thousands of hours of commercial appraisals, but very little.
But do you know what I'm
residential work.
talking about? Like,
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
It
I think everybody does.
Always happens. It's mind blowing.
It's
mind blowing.
it is wild. Like especially when they're like down to the dollar.
I was just gonna say that.
Yo.
When it's like 250,000 781. It's like, oh wow, the price is just for that.
That's interesting.
Wow, cool.
Exactly what it's sold for.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like, if you want to get philosophical and defend appraisers again too, it's like you can say that, well, if you signed a contract at this price, I mean, there's a very obvious market force there. There's a desire to buy this building at a specific price. I mean, that's sort of a comparable in itself.
But on the other hand, if you have a house that's worth $300,000, but you have a buyer that's their value of the house is $350,000, doesn't mean that the house is worth it. They think it's worth it, but it's not. The appraiser's not going to probably value it at $350,000. So
hopefully not. I mean, again,
unless we're in 08 again, right?
yeah. I love to see people win, but like I'm also like not a proponent at all for overvaluing stuff. I think that it's like very unhealthy to the market.
Yeah. So let's talk about something that's, I think, at least for me, I run into a lot is like appraisal disputes. So let's just say you're purchasing a property for 200 and it comes in at 150. You're like, oh man, like this deal's off. Like we're dead in the water. Like what are some of the options for the buyer to like remedy this appraisal that they just got that's super low?
I would say that, as a buyer or seller, or
I guess either.
Yeah. Either. Just, first of all, don't listen to anybody. if like the appraiser's telling you I'm the boss and this is this and blah, 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 I mean, don't listen to them. Like, it's your right to dispute it, through your lender, agent, whoever's helping you in the transaction. You can request to dispute it, and you need to make that request. I know that certain loans like VA, in particular, it's a little bit harder to actually go back and do this stuff. But, there's a request for a dispute, in all cases. And I apologize, I don't know the exact terminology for it, but that's the first thing you need to do. And you need to go and look at the data that led you to a certain conclusion. You need to represent that data in a different or more persuasive way if you haven't done so already. I'd say the second thing, in the worst case, and I've had to do this myself for my own property, is that, you need to find out what your lender is working with. I was going for a DSCR loan, and I didn't like the appraisal, and I guess not the appraiser either. And, I put in my dispute. He takes like a week and a half or 2 weeks to get back or maybe longer. And, he didn't even make an effort to look at the data that I presented, which was real data. And a lot of appraisers too, they're scared. They don't want to admit to the bank that they were an idiot. But anyway, he didn't like it. He just responded, "My value is my value, whatever." And I just ordered a new appraisal because the lender let me do that. But not every lender is going to let you do that. If you're working with a loan officer that's like, on the fence, doesn't want to create waves, like you need to go to the top. You need to find out what your rights are and just do it.
Yeah, we've actually done that. I've done it with clients that are doing refinances, and we've done it too, where we're doing a cash out refinance. We didn't believe in the value that the original appraiser had. So you pay an extra $1,500, and that's nothing. You're gonna get. I mean, if you truly believe in the market data you're looking at, then hopefully that second appraisal is much higher. But that's going to that payment, that second $1,500 you got to pay again to the appraiser. It's worth its weight in gold. You're totally going to get it back.
Oh yeah,
and a cash out too, tax free money.
Yeah, for me it saved me like $30,000.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's huge.
And it's a write off. Paying for another appraisal or any appraisal at all, right?
Yeah. Well, it goes in there eventually, but in the closing costs,
I think if the lender's willing to let you do that, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
So you own 30 units. You primarily invest in Waterbury, Connecticut. You don't own anywhere outside of Waterbury?
No.
That's your market.
Yeah.
I mean, I respect.
I like it. He's like honed in,
hyper focused. We just had another guest on Gaetano. He invests in student rentals, and he's just Fairfield and Sacred Heart.
I think I know that guy. He's like a Twitter guy, right?
Yeah, he's pretty big on Twitter. Yeah,
I know.
That's cool. He's great.
Again, he's super hyper focused in that area. And meanwhile, Ryan and I were like Fairfield, New London.
We have 17 property managers because no one wants to travel anywhere, which I get.
So we got to reevaluate our portfolio. But
Waterbury.
Yeah, how do you like investing in Waterbury? I mean, it's not the easiest of
of
all,
it's not the easiest. It's not the worst, but I mean, so first of all, like, believe it or not, I speak fluent Spanish.
Awesome.
Can you say
something?
like, ¿qué quieres que digo? And I was
Like I would know what it means anyway.
I just said, what do you want me to say? I don't know.
Okay.
That's awesome.
But yeah, my wife is from Colombia, so I mean, she
Awesome.
taught me how to speak Spanish. But yeah, man, it's kind of like a really long story. I mean, I hated Waterbury for a long time, and then we needed a place to live when I was broke, so I found somebody to do a sub 2 deal for me, and I paid $1 for the house because they're like,
Sweet.
I can't take this anymore.
Real quick, because I know
Yeah.
people will wonder what sub 2 is.
Yeah.
Just a quick
Can you
definition on
just
that one?
Quick, explain it for all our listeners.
Sure. It's like when you buy a house subject to its existing debt. And there's like masters of this out there. I'm certainly not. I did it because I needed to. So there's an existing mortgage on the house. The guy didn't want the house. I wanted the house. So, we went with both our lawyers, and he's like, I'll sell this house to you for $1. And I bought it with the existing debt.
Yep. So you basically take over his mortgage payment every
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
But title transfers,
yes.
like you own the house.
I have
It's
the
just
deed to the house.
Does he
yes.
continue to make those payments, or
I continue to
Yeah,
make
you
the payments.
on his behalf.
On his behalf. So, I mean, I think there's other ways to do sub 2 stuff, but this was
Yeah.
this was
Got
like
it.
that.
Perfect.
So, bought the house, and we're living there. I was like, yeah, this is not so bad, And then, at the time I didn't own any properties either. I was just doing other real estate stuff. I mean, I've done a whole bunch. But, I started to look at the market, and I'm like, what, if I don't hate living here and the houses are so cheap, why don't I buy something? So, I mean, it just started like that. And then, we had some really good tenants who were paying well, who were really accepting of the condition of basically any property. And, that's how we got off the ground. And once we could actually make good improvements and do good stuff, we just kept going.
But that's how you
yeah.
scaled. Was you're buying distressed properties most likely, or
Yeah, extremely distressed properties,
Adding
off
value.
market, adding value,
doing cash out
and,
refinance,
yeah,
replenishing your capital, and repeating the burr. You're doing
yeah,
a burr.
just burr.
Yeah, just burring all day long.
All
do,
day
you
long.
have, do you have any crazy Waterbury stories?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like tons and tons of stories. I mean, even from years ago, because I mean, I did REO stuff, but I mean, just the most recent stuff that happened to me is, I mean, we got our car stolen, like, brand new Mustang,
Wow.
we had it for like
Oh,
4
no.
months, and there's a thing called like a starter genie, and there's like a key fob scrambler. These dudes are like pros. I mean, I think that like they keep changing the technology, hopefully, so you can't like just keep doing this, but dude, it was so easy for them to steal the car. They just cruised
Right
off
out of
with
your
it,
driveway?
and yeah.
Did you see it happen, or
on the cameras, because we had cameras
no
back
kidding.
then? But yeah,
put the convertible top down and just took off?
You were living in the property and it got stolen from you?
yeah.
Damn. Were you
Yeah.
home?
I woke up at 4 a.m. because we were gonna go fishing, and yeah, I was outside all groggy and stuff. I was like,
What the fuck's my car?
yeah, I was like, where,
dude, where's my car?
And I asked my wife, I was like, where did you put the car? And she's like, what do you mean, where did I put the car? I was like, the car isn't there. She's like, oh no.
Oh, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did it get recovered?
Dude, it was the craziest thing ever. We actually watched these dudes like drive it like off into like they hit like a curb basically, and they jumped out of the car, and it like rolled into the river. It sounds like a lie, but like basically this is what happened. So we have the car on GPS. All right, so we went out there to go see what the deal is, and they were just like sitting there like smoking a blunt in the car, and they got all smooked, and like they freaking crashed it, and it was gone.
So you approached them.
Wow.
You and your
Yes,
wife approached them.
yes.
They jumped out, ran, and then the car just kind of took off into the river.
Yeah.
That's
It hit the
insane.
bottom curve. I actually I have a picture somewhere in my phone. Like maybe I'll just like send it to you after this. But you can see like the car, and you can see like a bunch of like tree branches and stuff, or like little tiny branches that got stuck on the side. It's totaled. The police recovered it. They brought it back to the police station, and that was it. But like again, just so like I don't seem like the one crazy person out there. If you go on like the Waterbury Talks Facebook group or look at the news, it's just like It happens a few times a year. Like these teens just like they joyride the car and then they leave it mangled, and that's it.
Hope you had like an insurance claim.
Oh yeah. we got money back, and we were fine after, and
Wild.
just life goes on. But yeah, that's my craziest story.
You're a certified general appraiser. You used to work for another appraisal company, I assume, and now you're out on your own, right? So
Yes.
you do a lot of consulting work for investors, or either flippers, investors.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that I do. I try to put deals together, or if people are having an issue, they call me. But I don't do any long form appraisals right now. And
Do you have a plan to open up your own shop, maybe, or?
I don't know. Like I would, but I feel like even with all the knowledge I have, like there's a lot of technical things that I still desire to know. Just things that get just super, super complicated. Maybe someday if I'm bored, I'll go work for like a Collier's or something like that. Those guys are like monsters, like true masters of the trade. But commercial appraising is like it's an art, and extremely complicated. I'd prefer to sit home and think about it philosophically rather than be, responsible for like $100 million loan or something like that.
That's crazy.
I think your consulting thing is really interesting. Are you willing to talk about that for a second? Like you help investors, right?
Yeah.
Get sort of like steer them in the right direction on the appraisal, whether it be the value that they want or like
we should hire
we should.
Mike when we go to do a refinance on this Middletown building.
So worth it.
Obviously, we're in the camp that we need the highest value, so we can.
Yes.
We'll probably just do a rate and term refinance, but we need to pay off the hard money loan, so it has to appraise at a certain amount. So anything you can do, like maybe we could talk about it for a second. What are some ways maybe we can? So it'll be income approach most heavily weighted.
Yeah.
What are some ways we can maybe manipulate the numbers, and not being dishonest or deceitful at all, but are there any certain, other additional incomes we can include, or are there certain expenses, maybe instead of, 5% accounting for 5% maintenance and repairs, or 3% for vacancy? Are there any,
tips and tricks?
Yeah, tips and tricks you can do to help kind of manipulate those numbers in our favor, of course?
Yeah, of course. Like, I help people build their cases, and, that's it. It's just as simple as that. I mean, a lot of times people will miss, key details that, they probably should have told the appraiser. Appraiser goes out and they make all reasonable assumptions that they can. The more that you limit that and tell them that, okay, this is verifiable, this is real, this is what's happening, or if you go in and you bring in your own neighborhood knowledge, that's really what's gonna crush it and bring it home. Because too many assumptions, you guys don't want to be like everybody else. You have to separate yourself to the rest. If you just want to use comp data, that's what's going to happen if you don't fight your case. I mean, there's even like, off-market sales and stuff that sometimes aren't on CoStar. You as the owner of the building, the property the best. And if you're going for a loan that, we're talking millions of dollars, you need to spend all the time researching everything, whether it be comps, the specific dynamics of the neighborhood, anything that could give you the edge that could get you maybe an extra $100, $200, $300, $400, $500,000.
And you help people do that.
Yeah, that's what I try to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And as far as other incomes, that's a good question. Like stuff like coin-op laundry, storage, like a
Parking,
garage
charging for
space.
parking.
Yes.
Like that stuff all helps.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, even on our multifamily properties, a lot of people don't take multifamily commercial appraising like as serious as they should. If you got coin-op laundry, if you got parking, if you got basement storage, anything else that I'm missing, I don't know what it could be, but those all need to be included as other income, and that, multiplied or rather divided by your cap rate, NOI, it just all adds to the value, but exponentially. It's hugely important. I mean, those 4 items that we talked about on, a 44 apartment unit building, I mean, if you got all of them, maybe $150,000 worth of value.
For sure.
Well, that's what's beautiful
Yeah.
about commercial. It's just all bottom line to the NOI. You're either decreasing expenses or increasing income, and anything you can do to generate the most amount of income for the highest NOI, because then the appraiser is just going to use they're going to use a cap rate. And my next,
We got to talk about this for a second.
real quick before we let you go. Cap rates, also subjective. How do you determine the market cap rate?
Okay, so there's a few ways to do it, and I'm only going to talk about the one that I'm experienced with and that I feel comfortable with, and really the one that's the most logical. So when things all come down to it, and I don't want to contradict myself here, but I want to try to help people think logically. Everything comes down to the sales approach. Even though we're talking about income, but just listen to this. So your market extracted cap rate all comes from sales data. So it's like, okay, 5 or 4 sales on CoStar, right? They all sold at a specific cap rate. Let's say they sold at a 5 cap, right? And, to find the value of the building, you take your NOI, divided it by cap rate to get the value. So if you're using market extracted cap rates and they're all the same in a particular market, income and sales approach value should always be the same. But, and this is where it gets crazy, if you have an expert like me, maybe you can fight against that. But in essence, back to your question, when you're using market extracted cap rates, it all goes back to the sales approach. What do these 5 buildings that all have 5 caps have an NOI of, or vice versa? And I can expand on that too, because I know it's a very convoluted answer, but does that sort of make sense?
It helps.
Yeah, it helps. I think you could argue, I think the building's worth an extra 0.5 of a cap. And so obviously the lower the cap rate, the better the value of your building's going to be. So,
and for various factors.
Right.
Like cap rate, there's not one single beating. So, and that's one of the biggest tools in the appraisal is, okay, I'm using a perfect example where I'm saying everything's a 5 cap, which doesn't exist anymore, by the way.
Maybe New York, right?
Yeah, maybe in New York, maybe, but doubtful.
Brownstone building or something.
It's something that's more, they're not buying for income for sure.
Right.
Just a place.
I'm assuming that everything's a 5 cap. Usually you get to a market in Connecticut and you're like, okay, 7 cap, 8 cap, 5 cap, 6 cap, 11, 12, blah, blah, blah. And it's all over the place. And that's where we create the story. Okay, I use these market extracted cap rates for this reason, and that's why my income and sales now line up. I'm looking to get the lowest cap rate, and I'm creating a story around that.
Do you think cap rates ever adjust based on interest rates? So right now, to get a commercial loan, if we were to refinance this building, we're looking at between probably 7.5% and 8% on a 20-year amortization and probably a 5-year
For
adjustable
sure.
rate. Yeah. So if I get a cap rate, so if let's just say 7.5, it would be my interest rate. My cap rate's lower than, if my cap rate's lower than that, it's negative return essentially. So
it's not possible.
So the banks, they're probably not even going to look at anything lower than what the prevailing interest rate is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it would be it's better to refinance in a lower, obviously for income wise, it's better to refinance in a lower interest rate, but also for cap rates.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the relationship between the two.
Yeah, there's always a relationship between like T-bills, cap rate,
risk-free rate,
and interest rate. That's
super interesting.
Pretty much it.
Wow. That is so interesting.
Dude.
I think my last question before we let you go. We talked a lot about like how to get more value, whether that's like providing leases, like showing extra income, like showing receipts for improvements made. Like you always want to be honest. Like I'll give that disclaimer. You always want to be honest, but like is an appraiser, generally speaking, going to be like, okay, you did windows, like let's see your bank statement. Like I want to see you actually paid. Like how far do they go?
So I don't think there's guys that are doing that, but all right. I mean, how do I explain this in a way that makes me feel good. It's like, so when I was an appraiser, and this is the truth, it's like when people were like blatantly lying to me, it just made me so angry. Like if at least if you're gonna lie to me, like lie to me well. But like there's some things where I could just look at and be like, okay, this simply isn't true. It says this and this, and I don't agree with that, and I'm not losing my license over that. But also, if like someone says, I spent this much on my building and I'm really proud of it, blah, 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 like who am I to say that, no, you didn't do that? So it's like me as an appraiser, I take the steps necessary to verify. But, if I receive like a construction budget, I'm not going to call that person a liar. I'm going to, I'm going to try my best to verify the data, from a contractor signed, way better. But a lot of the things that I received in the past were just, construction budgets, and we did the inspection. Does it look like quality work? I'm not here to just be calling people out left and right. I want to do the right thing, but I want to do the right thing for, my client, which is the bank, and also not be rude or crazy. So the answer is like, it depends on the appraiser, I'm sure. But like if you had to go and verify receipts, if you had to go and verify every single little thing, you would never finish. That's why an appraisal is like a series of checks and balances, especially commercial appraisal that has cost approach, sales approach, income approach. Like they really all need to jive. And if they all do at the end of the day, you probably did your work correctly. There's so many checks and balances that if you're a good appraiser, you're not going to fail. You're not going to let your client down, which is usually the bank,
Right. It's a really good answer.
Yeah.
It's Wild West commercial appraisal.
Yeah, well, that's
it
true.
is wild. Yeah.
There's a ton of value. Really appreciate your time.
Definitely, Thank you so much for coming on
no
the
problem.
podcast. We will definitely be using your services in the future.
Oh, for sure.
And if our listeners want to learn more about you, are you on social media, Facebook, Instagram, nothing?
Nothing.
How
They
about-
got
We're
a
gonna put a
text.
cell phone in the show notes.
Throw out a cell phone number. No, we'll
Yeah.
link where to find you in the show notes. And thank you again for coming on here. If you liked what you heard today, be sure to like and subscribe for more real estate related content. And just remember, sky's the limit. Dive deep and invest in how you want to live.
See you next time.
See you next time.